It had been nearly 48 hours since Maya had eaten. The city, cloaked in gray, wept with her, raindrops falling like silent witnesses to her struggle. With trembling hands, she clutched a paper bag, its contents simple but sacred. One sandwich, the last thread holding her to normalcy. Every bite was meant to matter, every crumb a lifeline. Yet the real story was only just beginning, hidden under the drizzle. She sat down on a worn park bench, cold seeping into her bones. Her stomach growled louder than the thunder above.
Hello, I'm going to tell you this incredible story. Put on your headphones for a better experience and sit comfortably because you're going to be moved. Remember that to receive new stories like this, you can subscribe to the channel, like the video, and activate the notification bell. Without further ado, let's get to the rest of the story.
But her gaze wandered when an elderly woman approached. The woman, wrapped in layers, looked lost in time, fragile, quiet, as if the rain remembered her. Maya hesitated for a second, then offered the sandwich without a word. Just like that, a moment of kindness wrote the first sentence of an emotional story she couldn't yet imagine. The woman's hands, frail yet dignified, accepted the gift with a grace that caught Maya off guard. "Thank you," the stranger said, her voice soft but steady, like it had weathered many storms before. She smiled, not the kind that ends on lips, but one that speaks directly to the soul. It was a smile that carried weight, the kind you don't forget even years later. Maya had no clue she'd just stepped into one of those touching stories that live beyond words. They sat together in silence, a rare, kind of peaceful one, where no one needed to fill the air with noise. The rain softened, as if listening in, respecting their quiet exchange. For a brief moment, Maya didn't feel homeless. She felt human. That paper bag had held more than a sandwich. It held connection, dignity, a real story waiting to unfold. When the woman stood to leave, she simply patted Maya's hand gently and disappeared into the mist. No fanfare, no promises, just a lingering warmth where she'd been. Maya stayed still, staring at the empty space beside her like it was holy ground. That park bench became a sacred chapter in her mind. Something had shifted, though she couldn't name it yet. People think the world changes with loud events, shocking news, big headlines. But sometimes it's in the smallest gesture. Sharing food with a stranger, looking into tired eyes, and choosing empathy over survival. That kind of emotional story isn't loud, but it echoes for miles. Maya would feel the ripple of that decision long after the hunger returned. She got up slowly, hunger gnawing again, but something inside her felt heavier than her stomach. A weight of reflection, a weight of choice. Was it foolish to give away the only thing she had left? Or had she done something, right? That thought lingered as she stepped into the storm again, unaware that her touching story was far from over. It was just getting started. The night swallowed Maya whole. With no food in her belly and nothing but her coat to guard her from the cold, she curled up at a bus stop, the wind slicing through her like a silent accusation. The bench was hard, the air unforgiving. Her thoughts, however, were louder than the city's chaos. Was kindness still worth it when your stomach screams in protest? She replayed the moment again and again, offering that sandwich, watching it leave her hands, feeling both pride and panic. It wasn't just food, it was her only comfort, her last thread of control. And yet, she'd given it away. Was it stupidity? Or was it something more sacred? This emotional story, even in its pain, whispered that purpose hides in the hardest decisions. Tears didn't fall that night, not from her eyes at least, but her body ached with hunger and doubt. As buses roared by, she imagined passengers with warm coffee, music, maybe even laughter. And still, her real story pulsed quietly in the dark, an act of compassion wrapped in uncertainty. No spotlight, no applause, just the cold and a question that wouldn't let go. People often imagine touching stories as grand, romantic, dramatic. But Maya was living one, silent, raw, and deeply human. There was no soundtrack, no narrator, just the ache of a body that had sacrificed its last comfort for someone else. And yet, inside that ache, a strange peace began to flicker. A belief that maybe, just maybe, love wasn't about having enough. It was about giving anyway. She thought of her mother's voice, long gone now, once telling her, "You'll be most proud of the things that cost you the most." Maybe this was one of those moments. Maybe her life wasn't falling apart. It was being shaken awake. Emotional stories don't always come with neat endings. Sometimes they begin with nothing and no one in the middle of a storm. The hours stretched like years. She tried to sleep but couldn't. Hunger gnawed. The wind mocked. And still, that image of the elderly woman's smile stayed with her. Warm, grounding almost. The morning light crept in slowly, as if unsure if Maya had survived the night. Her body was stiff, her mind foggy, but she was still breathing, and sometimes that's enough. As she stretched her aching limbs, a stranger approached. Not with judgment, not with pity, but with a simple message. "Someone named Estelle asked me to find you." And just like that, her real story took a turn she never saw coming. The volunteer's words didn't fully land at first. "Estelle? The woman from a bench?" Maya blinked, confused, hesitant. But hunger has a way of pushing you toward risk. So she followed, one step at a time, to a local soup kitchen where the smell of broth hit her like a lifeline. The emotional story she had unknowingly stepped into was quietly unfolding through ladles and kindness. Inside, she met Carol. Sharp eyes, firm voice, but a heart soft like warm bread. "You're welcome here," she said. Without asking questions Maya wasn't ready to answer. For the first time in days, Maya ate without shame. And the way Carol treated her, not as a burden, but as someone who still mattered, was worth more than the meal. It was a small room, but it held big hope. She thought she'd stay just long enough to eat, maybe rest a bit. But something pulled her to stay longer. She found herself volunteering, one bowl at a time, her hands learning the rhythm of giving again. Each face she served reflected her own pain, her own survival. And that made her feel seen. Like this emotional story was slowly becoming something bigger than just survival. It was becoming redemption. Every story she heard while handing out meals felt like a mirror. A mother fleeing violence. A teenager kicked out for being different. A man who'd lost everything to one bad decision. These were real stories, not statistics, and they wove into her spirit like threads in a quilt. Serving others didn't just help them. It stitched something back together in her too. There were laughs between the tears. Inside those worn-out walls, Maya rediscovered something she hadn't felt in ages. Purpose. It wasn't glamorous. It didn't come with a paycheck or applause. But it was real. And sometimes, what keeps us alive isn't success, it's significance. Her life still had missing pieces, but this kitchen, these people, gave her a reason to keep showing up. Maya didn't know why Estelle had sent her there. She still didn't understand the timing, the intention. But deep inside, a soft voice told her this was no accident. Life doesn't always send signs with flashing lights. Sometimes it sends them with soup and second chances. And as she wiped down counters and refilled pots, she had no idea the woman from the rain was about to return and change everything. It was just another Tuesday at the kitchen. Maya had her sleeves rolled up, apron splattered, and heart strangely full. The routine had become a kind of rhythm, a quiet, sacred pulse she had grown to love. But when the door opened and a woman walked in, everything paused. Not because of the interruption, but because Maya knew that face. Just not like this. Gone were the layers and shawls. In their place, a tailored coat, pearl earrings, and the poise of someone used to making decisions that moved the world. The woman from the park now stood before her not as a frail stranger, but as Estelle Robinson, a name Maya had only heard in passing. Her real story had just collided with someone else's legacy, and the impact would echo for years. Estelle's smile hadn't changed, though. That same warmth, ageless, sincere, still wrapped around every word she spoke. "I want to see you again," she said. "You reminded me of something I'd forgotten, grace and scarcity." Maya's heart thundered, trying to keep up with the weight of this emotional story. Who was she really talking to? And why had that single act meant so much? Then came the reveal. Estelle Robinson, mother of Julian Robinson, tech magnate, billionaire, philanthropist. Maya felt her knees weaken slightly. The sandwich, the rain, that quiet moment. She thought it had passed unnoticed by the world, but it hadn't. A real story had been witnessed and remembered by someone whose influence could shape entire cities. Estelle explained everything. She had been walking the city incognito, searching for authenticity in a world overrun by appearances. Most people walk past me. You shared the only thing you had. Maya could barely breathe. All she'd wanted that day was to eat. Now she stood at the center of a touching story being gently unfolded by the woman whose life could change hers forever. But Estelle wasn't there to offer pity or handouts. She spoke of purpose, of second chances, of people who rise not in spite of pain, but because of it. She said Maya had something rare, courage wrapped in humility, and the world needed more of that. Maya listened, heart racing, hands trembling slightly. Her mind kept looping one thought: this is really happening. The conversation ended not with a promise, but with a proposition. "Let me help you do more," Estelle said. And though Maya didn't yet know what more would look like, the invitation echoed louder than the storm from weeks ago. Something bigger was unfolding, and soon, Maya would learn just how far a single act of kindness could travel, especially when noticed by someone with the power to multiply it. The letter came 2 days later, stamped with a crest Maya didn't recognize. Inside, a scholarship offer, full support from the Robinson Foundation. Housing, education, mentorship. It didn't feel real. She read the words over and over, fingers tracing the paper like it held a secret door. The emotional story that had begun with a sandwich was now opening into a future she never dared to imagine. She moved into a modest but beautiful apartment near the city center. For the first time in years, she had keys to her own door, a bed she didn't have to share with the cold, and the promise of stability. Maya cried that night, not from pain, but from disbelief. This wasn't charity. It was trust. And that real story, born on a rain-soaked bench, was far from over. Through the Foundation's program, Maya learned everything she could: nutrition, community outreach, logistics, even entrepreneurship. She soaked up knowledge like sunlight after years in the dark. But more than learning, she began dreaming. What if she could create something that gave back in the same way she had been given? That seed grew fast. It had been waiting all along. Kind Cart was born quietly, just one van, one stove, one mission: to serve those the city had forgotten. Maya didn't wear suits or hold press conferences. She showed up with food, hugs, and listening ears. People saw her and felt seen. Every meal came with dignity, not pity. And that made Kind Cart more than a project. It became one of those truly touching stories people whispered about with awe. Julian Robinson eventually reached out. At first, Maya hesitated. What could she say to someone who built empires? But Julian wasn't there as a billionaire. He was there as Estelle's son. And he told Maya something she never forgot. "My mother doesn't choose people often. When she does, she sees something the world hasn't seen yet." That sentence stayed with her like a compass. Their collaboration was quiet but powerful. He helped her scale the operation. She helped him reconnect with the human side of his success. Together, they created mobile kitchens across several cities, always with Maya's heart at the center. What began with a sandwich fed thousands. What began in hunger sparked a purpose that couldn't be shaken. It was a real story built on sacrifice, turned into legacy. Maya never forgot the rain, the cold, or the feeling of giving when she had nothing. That moment still lived inside every bowl of soup she served. She didn't seek fame. She didn't want to be remembered as a miracle, just as someone who gave what she could and built a life around doing it again. The emotional story that started with a single act now carried a message far beyond her city. And somewhere out there, someone else was about to need that same spark. And now I want to ask you something deep. If you were starving and holding your last sandwich, would you give it away to a stranger in the rain? Be honest, because it's in moments like these that true character is revealed. Maya's emotional story isn't just touching. It's a real story that forces us to reflect on who we are when no one's watching. Sometimes it's not about how much we have, it's about how much we're willing to give. And that single decision, it could be the spark that changes everything. Stories like this remind us that kindness isn't weakness, it's courage in disguise. So what about you? Have you ever made a choice that felt small, but ended up transforming your life? Or someone else's? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your real story too. And hey, if this story moved you even a little bit, go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on the next emotional journey we share here. Your support helps these stories reach more hearts that need them.